For more on when consumers should be booking their holiday travel and where investors can look for in value right now, let's bring in Hopper Chief Data Scientist Patrick Surry. Also, Savanthi Syth, who is airlines analyst at Raymond James. And Savi, let me start with you first. Just this idea that if the 737 MAX is not certified this year, if that pushes into next year, even the end of January or later, what does that mean for the airlines affected?
Yeah, I think it just means that you're going to have a bit lower capacity growth next year. The airlines are working around the edges to try and grow as much as they want to. It just kind of delays the growth. One of the biggest concerns for investors for 2020 for this group is potential for oversupply in an environment maybe where demand might be slowing. So, in fact, from an investor perspective, a MAX delay is probably not the worst thing, and that might play to kind of favorably for airline stocks here. And I think some of the second half improvement is partly due to this kind of expectation that the MAX is going to take longer to return.
Hey, Patrick, the investors' benefit is bad news for consumers, though, because it does mean that prices could get pushed higher for a lot of those bookings further out.
So potentially, I think what we've seen in the market is that the 737 MAX is a pretty small fraction of capacity. So overall, it's not really affecting consumers. There are particular markets, airlines like American or Southwest, where they had a large fraction of these aircraft in service. So if you look at Miami, New York, for example, we've seen a drop in capacity, even though there's been some shifting. So you may pay a little bit more for a route like that, but overall, we don't see a big impact on the consumer.
Savi, just in terms of what the airlines have done this year, we looked at a chart earlier that showed United is the biggest gainer. It's up by more than 14% for the year to date. Southwest, not far behind it. It was up by more than 12%. How do you think that reacts, what the stock reactions are as we get into the new year? They've been the best gainers to this point. Do you think that continues to be the case?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any kind of negative impacts, but we do see kind of opportunities for the group in general. I think is well positioned. Again, there's some uncertainty about how that max capacity comes back on, but demand seems healthy. We'll have to kind of keep an eye on the economy. Our kind of picks heading into 2020 would be a little bit more Delta and American, just from kind of valuation or as well as kind of opportunity for sentiment to turn as well.
Patrick, just in terms of what we're looking at for consumers trying to get ready to buy their holiday tickets, I know Black Friday is the big day for shopping for retailers. What's the big day for the airlines for holiday travel? Yeah,
it's interesting. We 3 or 4 years ago, we looked at the data that we collect. We're obviously helping consumers forecast prices for their flights and found that it's actually the Tuesday after Cyber Monday, which is the big day for travel sales. And it looks like this year's going to be no exception. There's a number of airlines already announced that they'll be offering deals. We're doing a set of exclusive deals on Hopper. So if you're looking to plan your holiday travel for the Christmas, New Year season, it's a good idea to get that done this Tuesday.
How are consumer prices holding up for fares this year versus last year?
So actually, it's a little bit down. We've seen growth is a little up in terms of capacity. It's a little below what the airlines originally projected, but pricing is down 2 or 3% from same time last year. So there are still bargains out there. And particularly if you're looking to do bucket list trips, there are some great deals to be had.
Hey, go ahead.
I was going to say, a question for Savi, and maybe for you, Patrick, as well. Is there any risk to jet fuel prices having a substantial move higher in as much as you have these new International Maritime Organization requirements on sulfur for shipping coming into play? If global trade were to recover, we get a trade deal, you really start to pressure the demand for light oil to make that shipping fuel. Could that boost jet fuel prices and cause a problem with, airline margins next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of what Patrick was alluding to, some of the capacity that adds that you've seen a lot of it more in the off-peak periods than the peak, and I think part of that is a reflection of airlines taking advantage of lower fuel. Just some of those trips become a lot more profitable, so they've been willing to offer a lot more kind of off-peak travel as well, capacity growth in the off-peak periods as well. So if fuel comes back in a big way, and there is an opportunity, I think we'll find out what the IMO 2020 that you were referring to, what kind of an impact that has. We should know by December, January, if that's, having a big impact. And then if the global trade does improve, I think fuel could move higher. But then what I think you'll see is airlines kind of curtailing their capacity growth plans, especially in those off-peak periods. So there is a potential for then fares to move higher, some margin contraction. But I think within a couple of quarters, the airlines should be able to kind of push through some of the fare increases to recoup that, especially if kind of there's a global recovery.
It's interesting how the correlation between fuel prices and airline stocks has gone from being decidedly negative to a little more positive because of the capacity issue that you mentioned. But that's sort of a post 9/11 dynamic. It's pretty fascinating, actually.
Patrick, quick last word.
Yeah, no, I think we're seeing the same sort of thing that we've seen historically low airfare for the last 5 years, and it does look like we're kind of converging back to the correlation with fuel price that we've seen in the past. That's probably the biggest risk from a consumer perspective.